Welcome to Table for One. I'm the narrator, and today I'm going to be teaching you about Voidfall. This is not a start to finish how to play video. In this video, the one thing we're going to focus on in as quick a time as we can is how to, all the rules surrounding the crisis board and the alert deck. So if that's what you're looking for, you're in the right place. Let's get rolling. All right, so let's talk about everything you need to know about the crisis board and the alert deck. So if you're playing a standard game of Voidfall, during the evaluation phase here, the first step in the evaluation phase is to resolve a skirmish. Each player resolves a skirmish. But in the solo and co-op side of the board, the first step is for each player to resolve the crisis board, which you'll notice the symbol looks a lot like this board. So this is the crisis board here. So let's talk about everything you need to know. The first thing I want to go over is these cards at the bottom here. These are alert cards. So they might have a number 1, 2, or 3 on them, or all this iconography. This one looks super busy. But on the back, they're all the same. So from the back, you can't tell what's what. And the idea is, following some rules, you're going to mix up some of these cards in varying amounts. And then every turn, there's your alert deck, you're going, which matches the symbol here. You're going to flip over one of these cards. And you've got a number 1. It's telling you that you're going to be drawing number 1 crises cards for this round. So these are the crisis cards here at the top. These are numbered 0, 1, 2, and 3. We'll talk about the zeros in a little bit. But these represent ongoing crises that pop up, and you have to either try and manage them or deal with the fallout, or try and ignore them and hope that you're able to manage them further down the line. So let's now look at some crisis cards and just the anatomy of them, so you understand what we're talking about. So let's grab 3 number 1 cards here. So the first thing at the top here, this one has a red stripe at the top, this one has a blue one, and this one is both blue and red. This is a military crisis, an economic crisis, and a general crisis. And the colors correspond to either the red track, the blue track, or both tracks for a general crisis. And what's on each of these cards, this top section is giving you an objective for your turn, and the bottom section is giving you an optional penalty if you do not complete the objective. So why would they give you an optional penalty? Well, if you don't complete the objective, there's a number of penalties you can choose from, and that is one of them. So those will differ from card to card. Now, the best thing to do would be to complete the objective on your turn. So for example, this economic one says increase the population in your home sector to 4 or higher. Now you have to be able to actually do it. If you draw this card and your home sector population is already at 6, you can't increase it, but you could decrease it maybe to 5 and then increase it back up to 6, and then you'd achieve it. Otherwise, it would be unachievable. So at the end or during your turn, if you manage to achieve the objective, discard the card. It's out of the game. No penalties. Nothing bad happens. It's a good thing. Try and do that. If, however, you are unable to achieve the objective by the end of your turn, you've got 3 options. So this is the spot here for the current crisis. So you get to the end of your turn, you haven't achieved it. First, you can take this penalty here at the bottom. It's a one-time penalty, but you have to take it now if you're going to take it. So in this particular case, remove 1 reclaimed token from the map. Your second option is to discard the card and take a catastrophe token. When you add a catastrophe token, every player in the game gets to remove 1 corruption or gain 5 resources of their choice, which sounds pretty good. But the other thing to keep in mind is that for every catastrophe token at the end of the game, the Voidborn get 20 influence, so you're making your win condition harder. And there are only 3 tokens. If at any point you need to add a fourth token and you don't have any, you lose the game automatically. So you want to be careful with how you manage these corruption tokens, or I'm sorry, catastrophe tokens. Now, the last thing you can do, if you don't want to take a catastrophe token and you don't want to pay the immediate penalty, you can add it to the corresponding track on the crisis board. So economic crises have to go in the bottom row, military crises have to go on the top row, general crises go to a row of your choice. So let's use the example of it being going into the evaluation phase. So we could talk about how to resolve this crisis board. So the first thing you do is resolve the military track by just resolving a skirmish, which is just like the other side of the galactic board. Like in a competitive game, you're going to skirmish, but you're going to use whatever modifier is revealed in this row. So you always look at the leftmost space in whatever row you're resolving. So if we're on the military row, this is the leftmost revealed space. So you're just going to have a regular skirmish. Say that there was a crisis card here, though, that covers up that space. And now this is the leftmost revealed. So now you're going to have a skirmish with +1 Voidborn fleet power. Now, if it's cycles 2 or 3, there's already +1. So you're going to really be adding 1 and 1. You're going to have 2 Voidborn fleet power to contend with on top of, however many corruption are on your player mat. And if, for example, you had 2 crises on this military row, well, now it's going to be +2. So this is going to get progressively worse. So at the end of the cycle, whenever you resolve this whole board, the first thing you do is you skirmish with this modifier. And in fact, this top row, this military row, anytime you skirmish for any reason in this game, you have to use this modifier in the skirmish. So if the board, for example, looked like this, and you failed to achieve this objective this turn, you can take this immediate penalty where you skirmish, but it will have this modifier involved. Now, when you have to resolve the economic track, and if you're resolving the entire crisis board, you do the top track and then the bottom, you have to pay whatever resources are listed in the leftmost unoccupied space. So by default, there's none, but as you start to add cards, it could be material and energy, and then it starts to add science and then increasing amounts of those resources. Now, because this is not upkeep, you may use credits in place of materials and energy, but not for science. Now, for each one of these resources that you cannot satisfy, you lose 3 influence. So here you need 2 material, 2 energy, and 2 science. Let's say you have 2 material, 2 energy, and 1 science. Well, that's going to be 3 influence that you lose. Let's say you have no resources. Okay, no resources of any kind. So 2, 4, 6 resources that you're short, minus 3 influence each, you could lose up to 18 influence. So you want to be cautious about how much you fill these tracks. Now, after cards end up on these tracks, you no longer are eligible to ever take this bottom penalty to get rid of it. But if and when you ever satisfy this top part at any point on your turn, another player's turn, or even in between your turns, maybe during the galactic event or during the evaluation phase, if you meet the criteria, you then remove the card from the board and it goes away immediately at that time. Well, let's talk a little bit more about how the cards interact on these boards. So I'll grab some more cards here, and these are all general, so they can go on either track. Let's say this one is already here, and we fail to meet this this objective on this military card. It goes up on the military track, and everything that's already there slides down 1 space. Let's say that happens again. I get this card, and I'm unable to resolve it, and I don't want to pay the immediate penalty or take a catastrophe token. I decide I want to put it, it's a general one, I could put it on either track. I decide I'm going to put it on the military track. Again, these slide down, and then we could do that again. Now at this point, if I had this general card and I failed to achieve the objective, I could choose to put it on the military track, but there's no more room because you can only hold 4 cards on either track. This is just a, it's, you can see, smaller than a card. It can't hold a card. It just tells you what the current penalty is. So if I go to put this on the top, that card slides right off the board. Anytime something slides off the right side of the board, you immediately gain a catastrophe token. So if you're not careful, you could be forced to take catastrophes when you don't necessarily want to. So it's important to manage that. So let's talk for a brief minute here about Harbingers as well, because those are going to interact with this board, believe it or not. So in a solo or competitive game, you'll have Harbinger tokens on the map. Now, anytime you invade and successfully win the combat in a sector that has a Harbinger, you remove the Harbinger from that hex and you add it to either one of these tracks. Harbingers always go all the way to the left. So if there was a card here, you add the Harbinger here. Harbingers always go before cards. Now, if this came up, this crisis in the next round, and we didn't achieve it and we want to add it to the top track, the existing cards slide, but this card goes to the right of the Harbingers. It goes to the left of all the other cards. So that will put Harbingers up on the board. Now, why would we want to put Harbingers up on this board? It's going to cause penalties. Well, the short answer is, at the end of the game, every Harbinger still on the map earns 10 influence for the Voidborn, but every Harbinger up on the Crisis board gives no influence to the Voidborn. So you're lowering your victory conditions every time you add a Harbinger from the map onto the Crisis board. I do want to point out there are a few ways to get these Harbingers back off. For example, if you look at the joint and heroic focus cards for solo and for co-op play, they both have this option to remove a Harbinger. So you can choose to remove it from the map, but you can also choose to remove it from the board. And whenever you remove a Harbinger, it just goes back into the common supply. You'll find the same symbol on all of the safe haven tiles. When you complete a safe haven, one of the things you could do is remove a Harbinger, again, from the map or from the board. So if you remove it from the map, it goes to the supply, and then it's 10 less victory points for the Voidborn. But if you're really stuck up here and you've got a lot of Harbingers and it's causing you problems, you can remove it from the board as well. Now, you also want to be careful. Watch out for this symbol, which means remove a Harbinger from a hex. Whenever you see that symbol, again, you're removing a Harbinger, but it has to come from the map. It can't come from the Crisis board in that case, so just be careful of the symbols. Now, maybe you're doing a great job managing all your Crisis cards as they come in, and you're fulfilling them, and you're also invading a lot of sectors with Harbingers. It is also possible, normally I would stand these up, but from this angle, it makes sense to lay them down. It is still possible to add a Harbinger, and then all the other Harbingers slide down and have a Harbinger fall off the side as well. In that case, this goes back to the supply, and again, you earn a Catastrophe token. But because Harbingers always go to the left, you're not going to have any Harbingers fall off as long as you have cards that can fall off. Cards will fall off first. If I had a Harbinger now, all the cards slide down, this card would fall off. So you would have to have a row completely full of Harbingers before you can have a Harbinger fall off, but it is possible. So let's get these out of here for now. We're done talking about Harbingers. The Crisis cards are numbered because they get progressively more difficult from 0 to 3. The 3s are the most difficult ones to resolve and have the most punishing immediate consequences if you fail to achieve the objective. So that's where these setup cards come into play. These are going to tell you how to assemble your alert deck. So you can play on easy, normal, or hard. If we look at easy mode first, we'll put these back. If we look at easy mode first, what this card tells us is for cycle 1, your alert deck should be 6 number 1 cards and no other cards. So we'll put these back. So you're going to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is all of them. Technically, you shuffle them up, but you know they're all 1s. Now, every round at the beginning of player 1's turn, you reveal the next alert card. So this is going to stay here through everyone's turn. So then the first player on their turn, they're going to draw a number 1 crisis. And they can, again, either solve it or take the immediate penalty. If they don't solve it, a catastrophe token, or place it on the track. Now it goes to the next player's turn. This stays here because all players are going to resolve a crisis of the same difficulty. So the next player draws another number 1 crisis, and then they may either solve it, or they can take the immediate penalty if they don't solve it, a catastrophe token, or add it to a track. Now don't forget at this point, the second player might solve this crisis, in which case it can be removed, and then maybe they add this one to the track, or maybe they solve them both. So once they're up there, any player can resolve them. Now you keep going in this manner, and then at the end of the, everyone takes their first turn. When it gets back to player 1, they again reveal the next card. And let's say that there's 4 cards in this first cycle. Okay, so we've played through the whole first cycle now. If we look at the galactic board, what's going on here is they're just telling you need to, during the preparation phase, assemble your new alert deck. So these are the cards we've used. All of these numbered cards that have been used come back here. These are not used. These are going to stay here. And so it says for the next cycle, we need 3 number 1s. So we're going to take 3 number 1s and add them here. 2 number 2s. So we're going to take 2 number 2s. And 1 war card. That's what this symbol means. We'll talk about that in a moment, but then we add our war card. And then you shuffle these up. And when they're good and shuffled, this is your new alert deck. So whatever you don't use in one round will carry over to the next. So now we're starting with the number 2 alert this time. And we know there's 1 more of those out there, plus a war card, and the rest should be 1s. So now would be an appropriate time to talk about the war cards. So the first thing I want to point out is at the very bottom, it has the difficulty setting. So here's the symbols for easy, normal, and hard. There are 2 war cards with an easy symbol, 2 with both an easy and a normal, 2 with both a normal and a hard, and 2 with just the hard symbol. So at the beginning of the game, when you choose your difficulty, take all the war cards with that symbol. So if we're playing on easy, we'll take both of these and both of these. The other ones will not make an appearance in the game. So when we're assembling our alert deck and we need a war card, we're going to take of the ones that are in the game, shuffle them up, and put one of those into the alert deck. Now when that card comes up, it's a little bit different than the others. What it's basically saying, if you look at the symbols, it's got the symbol on it for the crisis board resolution. So when a war card comes up on everyone's turn that round, you're not going to draw a crisis. Instead, at the end of your turn, you're going to resolve the crisis board. So if I'm player 1, at the end of my turn, I resolve the crisis board with whatever modifiers are here, and I pay whatever these economic costs are. Then the war card stays for the next player. Player 2 takes their turn. At the end of their turn, they resolve the crisis board. Player 3 and player 4, for however many players you have. Then when it's the next round, you just grab the next alert card like normal. Any resolved war card, once you're done with it, is out of the game. So you won't see the same war card twice in one game. In an easy game, you'll see a max of 2 war cards. But if we look at normal and hard, put them here. In a normal game, there's up to 3 war cards, and in a hard game, there's up to 4. So a couple things to point out on these setup cards, going from left to right, easy, normal, hard. You'll notice the Voidborn start with more influence, so you'll have a harder time achieving the end goal of having more influence than the Voidborn, but also you'll see the number 1 alert cards are used less and less, and the number 3s are used more and more. There's also more war cards in each difficulty setting, so you can expect to resolve that crisis board more times, but you can't exactly know what turn it's going to be that you need to resolve it. I also want to point out on the normal and hard setup cards, there's a Harbinger symbol on which is not on the easy. So on normal, it's telling you at the beginning of cycle 3, you need to add a Harbinger to the crisis board, and you get to pick if you want the military track or the economic, but you have to put one. And on the hard card, it's saying at the beginning of cycle 2, you add a Harbinger. Now, one more thing that's different about normal and hard that doesn't occur on easy is at the very beginning, you add 2 level 0 cards. That's what these are for. So there's 5 level 0 cards in total, and they are all general crises, so they can go on either track. So at the beginning of the game, if you're playing normal or hard, you shuffle these up, and you put 1 on each track. So these cards have no immediate penalty, because the only way to get rid of them is either have them fall off the side of the board, or to eventually solve whatever the objective is. And so when any player solves that objective, that can finally come off the board and stop modifying these 2 tracks. So that's what this symbol is. Now, one more note on the war cards that I want to point out. Each of these war cards has cycle 1, 2, and 3 on it, and it has you resolve the entire crisis board but it'll give you modifiers. So this one is for normal/hard difficulty. If you draw this card in cycle 1, you resolve the crisis board, and if you successfully defend, you gain a bounty token. They generally get more difficult as the cycles go on. So in cycle 2, if you draw this particular card, you have to resolve the entire crisis board at the end of each player's turn, but the Voidborn will have +1 fleet power in addition to whatever other modifiers you've got out there. And if you successfully defend, you can exchange 1 glory token for one of +1 value. And if you draw this in cycle 3, each player resolves the entire crisis board at the end of their turn, but the Voidborn have 1 approach absorption. And if you successfully defend, you have to add a sector defense to an adjacent Voidborn sector, which is pretty punishing. So again, that's for normal or hard. The easier ones aren't quite so bad, but again, you just want to, when you draw the card, look at, are you in cycle 1, 2, or 3, and then you resolve the crisis board with the listed modifier. So that's what's going on these war cards. Now, regarding the war cards, I just want to say one other thing. If you're playing solo, the wording in the rule book has tripped up some people, as far as I've seen online. It says when there's a war card, do not remove the card after you resolve it. What it's saying is it's really talking about co-op more specifically, but after you resolve this, the next player also needs to resolve the war card. Like when the first player resolves it, it doesn't go away because player 2 needs to resolve it, player 3 needs to resolve it, and you have to go through the entire round. If you're playing solo, you're the only player, so after you've resolved it, you're just going on to the next turn, and you're going to replace this with the next card in the alert deck. So it doesn't stay there permanently. I know that's confused a couple people, so hopefully that helps to alleviate that confusion. And the very last thing I'm going to say about the crisis board is just all this iconography down the middle. This is telling you, it's a reference on how to score the Voidborn at the end of the game for solo and co-op. And I've got a whole other video on that. I'll put the link in the description, but this is just a reminder for what you need to do to calculate the Voidborn score to know whether or not you've defeated them. So hopefully that's a comprehensive guide to everything going on with the crisis board, the alert cards, all the crisis cards, and how Harbingers interact with that, just everything going on up here. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to get you an answer. And otherwise, if you're still here, I would love it if you would consider subscribing and leaving a like so that I can continue to make more of this content. And if there's something else you'd like me to go over, let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to address that too. So that's what I've got for you this week. Thank you for watching Table for One, and I will see you in the next video.